Fab,
Okay.
welcome. Welcome to the Democratizing SEO
Hello.
podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. Good. Thanks. Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Very, very glad to have had you on. I've wanted to converse with you for a while now, because I thought your profile on LinkedIn looks very interesting. And I thought of a topic which I considered you for because I thought your profile matches this topic. So I'm calling this topic what the business needs to believe in SEO. And it's very opinion based. With your experience where you work, I thought you'll be a brilliant person to speak with. I want to get through your background and then go into the early days of what it's like having SEO client side and what it's like in the seasoned times and also learnings from your experience. So if that all sounds good with you, as I like to do with all my SEO guests, I like to ask them how they got into SEO, how they started. So with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
That's a very, very interesting question. I left Italy at after uni. Uni took ages. I was playing video game and I did 2 unis. And then when I when I arrived in and then I decided that I wanted to live in London. So when I arrived in London, I did not know exactly what to do. There were maybe a few companies that I wanted to work for, but there was no very good rationale on the why. Things like Google or Amazon. And then I realized that everything that I kind of knew a little bit about the internet was somehow related to SEO or like. I was working on forums before and other stuff, and then I said, okay, seems okay. That's the only thing that I know about the internet. So let's start that way. But until then, I did not have any commercial experience. Or if only I knew that this thing was a job, I would have started way sooner. But like until then, it was completely. Far away from me. I think one of my last thing that I studied had something to do with internet marketing, but it was so broad that it was impossible to get here anyway. And then out of the online marketing jobs that I was searching, literally my first internship, there was some SEO in it, and then I say, okay, seems that that's the thing that I know the most, or at least I find more interesting. That's how I started, and then I had an internship in a company that was organizing events of all sorts, literally 20, 30 conferences a year. Plus they had another small company that was organizing hundreds of conferences a year. And what they were doing every conference, they were throwing the website in the bin type of thing. And then you can understand why that wasn't a good idea. And so they started to hire SEOs in that company. So I joined there literally as intern. My boss at the time left 1 week after I joined. So I didn't have the chance to learn a lot from that person, even though we kept in touch. And that's how I started. And then I went to work for agency for a few years. And then I joined Wise. And here I am. Yeah. Now I've been at Wise for quite a long time. Yeah, beyond the long time.
Do you have a favorite area of SEO?
There are things that it's not that I don't like, but I'm not good at. So anything that is a bit more in the creative space is probably not my like strongest area. Even though more recently, I last year or so, I started with my partner a YouTube channel. So actually, I'm venturing a bit more into the being a bit more creative. When I was working in agency, we were mostly doing audits and we had few clients that were changing platform. We had few enterprise clients that were on various CMS, and we were advising them. That was most of the work. But then back in time, we also had clients that were doing a bit of everything from content to link building. So generally I've been working on more technical stuff, but at the same time, and then when you join, a company, all that thing goes away in the sense that no one cares on whether you like like technical stuff or like creating content or whatever. You just give it a website and then good luck, right? So and then people don't engage on these differences. They just ask you, okay, what are you gonna do, and is this gonna drive new customers? I think that's where the conversation ends up. Then that kind of force you to like make choices, and probably your preference kind of skew that a bit. I was lucky that when I joined Wise, we were probably the most hyped fintech company out there at the time. So we were receiving ton of PR coverage every single day, literally. Even though a competitor was raising money, they were linking to us and not to them. And so I had the luxury, but Wise at the time had no pages on the website. So the website when I joined was literally just the home page. So because of that, and I say, okay, that's perfect, right? I'm just going to focus on building the website and not caring about the aspect of promoting anything, or at least we have a lot of a loyal customer that recommend to friends. We have a lot of brand search demand. We have all the healthy signal that eventually other people maybe miss and try to make up for. We have them. So we set up the team, and to date, even though we do sometimes some shy attempts, but to date we haven't worked on links at Wise. We just been focusing on building the platforms, building the pages, content. We own the landing experience pretty much end to end. So it's not that our job as SEO is just to go there and tweak meta title, meta description, but we actually have to make the website. That's what I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have been doing. So to some extent, I kept doing what I liked, but then this was just what was making sense for the company. If Wise would have had millions of pages already and no links, probably we would have changed plans, right?
Yeah.
But back in time, and also in general, like for a startup, I often spend time with the founders of literally very early stage companies, and they obviously get proposed with the menu of items to shop for when it comes to SEO. And when looking back at my experience at Wise, having a very authoritative domain did help, because obviously we had more credibility from day one. But then until the page is not live, that on and off experience, you don't have it, right? So like even with new companies, I try to spend time with them sometimes on how getting to a place where you can increase your web presence significantly is still the most important thing. At some point, probably it might be that in some area you have a lot of content, but it's not performing well, maybe because of links. But at the same time, like probably the most obvious example that I have is there's no newspaper that I know that did link building, yet we all want links from them, right? And what they did, they just published like a gigantic amount of content on the web, up to the point that like the web, Google and co think that they are authoritative. So I think that's how we set up things at Wise, which again is specific to us because we are not the kind of company that there are some companies that the service that they provide is not newsworthy. What they do is not glamour. What they do is no one talks about it, right? Like, so you probably need this other type of promotion. In our case, to date, most of our growth come from like word of mouth and our customer telling their friends. These people they also link to you. These people they also do give a lot of positive signal to Google on that sense. But still we set up things to become to build a massive presence on the web. That's our goal. We know that if we keep doing it at a consistent rate, And obviously, the bigger you get, the harder it gets. If you keep doing it, then there's a good chance that your visibility will follow, right? If tomorrow you publish as much pages as Amazon has got, there's a good chance that you will have more traffic and more customers. But then obviously, get to the point where you can publish as much e-commerce pages as Amazon has got takes some work, right? And I think that's the hard part, right? And yeah, but that's what we try to work on, is how can we make some of this stuff more scalable. How can we streamline some of our operation? Most of the challenges actually aren't SEO. Like we do SEO, but the SEO is the easy part to some extent sometimes, in the sense that, or even though we get it a little bit wrong, I think we can live with it. If we improve publishing operation by 40%, even though 10% of the article don't have good SEO, we still have 40% more presence on the web. It must do something, right? And this with the keeping in mind that we don't make this content blind, right? We make it with keyword data in mind. The people that work there, they understand SEO. There are a bunch of processes to ensure that we don't write about the weather, right? And we write about things that people search, right? There's certain stuff going on, but sometimes I think that compare to other companies, we are probably a bit less strict on the checklist, some of the SEO stuff. And as opposed to trading that off with the speed at which we increase our web presence. There are some companies though that I was speaking with someone recently that they actually work on a very limited pool of transactional keyword. They have a very small website, even though they are a big brand, right? So if I would have their website, I would create 50% more pages, if not 200% more, but they have a very small number of pages that they work on, and they keep it very tight, because for them some of these transactional terms are really important. If they lose one position on one of the top 10 terms, that kind of change the month for them. And this is sometimes this is specific to industry. There's some industry where the composition of the money and revenue comes just from few keywords. There are industry like Wise where it's not the case. We go as long tail as ever if we have to, right? But obviously that requires scale. But there are some people who operate a bit differently from how we do. We're probably less strict on the individual keyword performance, right? We did not have a ranking tool until 2 years ago.
Wow.
And we've been doing SEO for 6 years. We were just literally looking at Search Console and publishing in the majority of the time, with the view that we still had to build that page, and so whoever was ranking that we were looking at was ranking there for the sake of building the page, but eventually it was not really helping sometimes a lot to track one more or less position, at least at the individual page level. Then obviously at in aggregate we do, but on a day-to-day, if we drop one position of ranking on one page, even though the page is big, for us, there's no one that turns on alarm bells and there's a siren in the building. And in some other companies, I think it might be the case some type of businesses.
It definitely is. It definitely is. In some companies, the CEO, for example, if rankings drop just one position, it's all hands on deck type of situation. So
yeah. That one, I think we have to fight it a bit as well. I always fight, but argue in a friendly way with our VP growth on the subject that there is this syndrome of the CEO Googling his own company. His own company, right? Yeah. So I think it's almost like a disease, right? They basically search something. Is often either a product manager or an executive that Googles something that no customer would ever Google, will get a very skewed result. For some reason, think that this keyword is anyhow important and searched, and then they go on Slack and they make a massive noise on hey, look, we're not ranking for this keyword, right? And then, what you have to do, you go to Search Console, you look at that keyword has got no search volume, even though we have ranked once for that keyword. And then you show them that no one is searching for this thing, or otherwise you show them that, like, even though it's searching, this thing is not converting, right? So, but I think this is like, is normal. I think the tricky part comes when, so at least advice, I'm fully allowed to tell them to go for a walk, and if they raise any of this thing. In other companies, unfortunately, when the setup is top down, then people are forced to work on that very, very keyword that that person that doesn't understand. And trust me, this person, like this example that I made you, that person understands search really well, right? Like it's like among the people that you would consider, executive of a company, this person is our core at search, right? It's not just there with an opinion on it. Yet, when you're not attached to the day-to-day of where exactly. It matters to rank, or like where you would go with the million of keywords that you have, maybe you might misjudge some things, right? But unfortunately, in other companies, these people, they often get told, they often have the ability to tell whoever is in the SEO team to do something about it, and even though the SEO team goes back to them with probably a good rationale why that is not gonna change things, it's still gonna move things a lot. But then sometimes it's just about proving people wrong or having feedback from customers, right? Like another example that we have is, Wise's core product is money transfer, right? And you can transfer very little money, or you can transfer a lot of money. By a lot, I mean more than what I currently would ever have on my bank account, So if there are certain customers, obviously, that there are some customers that regularly transfer a small amount of money. There are some customers that transfer one-off a decent amount of money. There are some customers that either one-off or because some of other reason, they do a transaction that is particularly large, right? Like from like a monetary perspective,
right?
And then obviously, because of this transaction being a bit more sensitive, if you send £100, we might have certain regulatory requirements. If you send £20 million, we might need to ask you a couple of questions, right? On like where this money is coming from, right? What's going on? Like any other financial regulated institution does. So we have a team, obviously, that works on the making sure that these extremely large transfers are successful, right? Like because obviously the experience of the customer is a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
If you want to send £100, you can pretty much self-serve 99.9% of the time. If you are transferring large amounts, there might be a need that you need to chat with some of our operation support people. So we have a team like that works on this type of customers. And the first thing that this team comes to the SEO team to talk about is creating pages for things like, I need to send a large amount of money, right? Like, so we have pages that cover like search intent, like money transfer, sending money online, or this kind of keywords. And this person comes to us, or someone in that team, there have been multiple already, come to us and say, how come that when I Google, I need to send a large amount of money, we don't have a page, or we don't show up in Google. And I think, that's again, not talking to customer enough, right? It's not that the millionaire go to the bank and say, hey, I want a bank account for the millionaire, right? We all get a bank account. You all do a transfer. It's just that I happen to have more money at this point in time, right? Than someone else that is just sending maybe £10 back to their friends for the dinner, right? So I think this is again disconnect between, you might be working on something within the company that is geared toward this type of experience, but then you're not so connected to what people search, right?
Right.
Like people who have more or less money do not search differently, right? If they need to send money to France, they search, how can I send money to France? They don't attach to it, hey, by the way, I have a lot of money, right? Like they could, right? But it's less likely, right? Like, it's not a natural behavior, right? Like, and they might get to that point where they understand whether there are limits of the transfer, right? And there's a bunch of questions that they might ask themselves. But when they search in the first place, it's not that they attach, and she's kind of, I think healthy. I hope that not many people do, right? I hope that not many people start a query with a millionaire and tell me, right? Like, what am I going to do with it, right? Like, also with the same thing was happening when I was in agency. We were working for HSBC. One of the business unit was HSBC Private Bank. To be an HSBC Private Bank, you need to have, I don't know exactly, but maybe let's say something like $5 million in cash liquidity on top of assets. And that customer, that company was working with us on SEO. And at the time in agency, I was like, fine, let's do SEO. But thinking about it, right? If you have 5 million cash, right, which is a lot of money, cash free, right, to spend tomorrow, plus a bunch of assets that total 200-300 million, are you going to be the guy that goes to open the new bank account, or you will probably have someone that does it for you, right? Exactly. And that person is not going to Google, I want a private bank, right? They probably know where to go. It's probably their job. It's probably so again, like there are assumptions that we make about search that then is not so true when
it's not reality.
Like when you go to see what people and you could find out about this in two ways, right? One is search data, right, which is very easy to access. The second is talking to customers, right? Like take one of these customer, talk to them and say, have you ever in your life find in the position where you have to Google this keyword? And these people will tell you, definitely no, right? Sorry, man. Like I don't search for it, right? And that will kind of validate where you're going. But unfortunately, some people that are not so attached to the day-to-day of these, they might come to the SEO team and say, hey, we have to rank for this, right? That is probably the most unhealthy scenario where someone else tells you what to rank for. And that's, that this thing is not gonna end up well, right? They might be happy with you or about what you do, but then ultimately, if the company doesn't grow, then they might be happy with you in the short term, but in the long run, then they things will not go well. So you're not gonna. If I would have done exactly what people wanted me to do from day one, probably would have not grown traffic so much. I think that's given. Unfortunately, not all the companies, they put people in the position to choose so much. And there's like, I think that's something that, when people ask me, why have you been at Wise for so long? The answer is that, I can do what I want, or at least with a good degree, right?
Yeah. You have to back
and
it.
the early, the early days, but even early days, right? Like when I joined, we wanted to build a product with engineers that was generating millions of pages on the website. We thought that this was a good idea. Some competitor write something like that. And, our founder, Cristo, came to that meeting and told me, that doesn't sound like a good idea, but this is a polite way to say it. This doesn't sound like a good idea. People could just Google that thing and find it somewhere else, right? And then I'm like, but that's the point of SEO, right? They have to find us, right? Not find this somewhere else.
Not elsewhere.
So, But then, like, again, think about yourself in the first month into a job, with the CEO coming there, or founder CEO, I can't remember if back then was already CEO. Founder CEO coming there and tell you don't do it. Probably you wouldn't do it. Right? Like there's a good chance that you would like put that amazing idea in the corner, find something else, as opposed to like the environment where we operate. Actually, there were other people that, literally behind me were telling me, do it. I'm like, yeah, but, it's my job, right? It's not yours. Right? But eventually I did it. We did it and it's fine, right? Like that now is a big part of our website, is okay. And, but I think that level of trust / if you get hired to be the most knowledgeable SEO person in a company, why would I not trust you? Right? Like if I have to hire you as the most knowledgeable SEO person in my startup or larger business, and then I tell you what to do, then you're not so good, right? Like, exactly. like if you have to be good enough, right? That like, and equally the same happened these days with my leads. Like one way for me to build an opinion on whether someone is pushing as hard as I would do on a topic. These days I don't work in the day-to-day of all the teams that we have. So there are people doing SEO, technical SEO and platform stuff on wise.com. There are people in the editorial team. We have another SEO team that works on a bunch of third-party domains. So I don't work in the day-to-day of all these teams, not every week. And then one way to reference, the ambition of the lead of each team is whether, in our weekly one-on-one, they tell me something that I didn't know before, right? And that's a good sign, right? And the same thing should happen with anyone else. If your boss always tells you what to do, and as a SEO you never can tell them anything new, then why? Like at some point it doesn't work so well, as opposed to you going into that meeting and the person that is in charge for SEO should be the one surprising you, right? Why? Yeah, they're spending all day long on this thing, and you don't, right? Just by looking at the hours that you put into it, they should come up with something exciting or some idea, right? Doesn't mean that they're gonna work, right? But at least some ideas on what to do. But if that doesn't happen, then obviously, it's fine. But I start having a bit of alarm bell, in the sense that these days I spent last week on YouTube or CRM, I don't know. And which means that it's not that I spent the last week just thinking about SEO. And then if I walk into the weekly meeting with you, that you've been spending the entire week thinking about SEO, and I have to tell you what to do, then is I think it's not good, right? It's unlikely, right? Especially if you got hired with the assumption that you're the most knowledgeable person about SEO. But I think, unfortunately, it's not that people are not good. It's often the fact that in some organization, this level of freedom or this level of trust is missing, right? And therefore they start already with a relationship that is really geared towards, let me tell you what to do. Let me tell you how much money you're gonna spend doing it, and let me tell you what is coming out of it. Yet I'm not the search expert. You are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
and the thing that kind of drives the issue sometimes. Yeah. But I think
you mentioned earlier.
Sorry, go on.
You mentioned earlier that SEO is the easy bit. Can you elaborate a bit more on that? It's easy a bit compared to what else?
No. I think in general, it's not that applying SEO is easy, but understanding what is broken and what needs to be there is not so complicated. The difficult part is
pretty straightforward,
right?
Yeah.
That's why most of the people, and that's where I tend to disagree. They when you go to conferences and there's someone that tells you, I had this amazing recommendation, they didn't get implemented, and then this is the result. I'm like, okay, you getting with the recommendation is relatively okay, and sometimes it's a bit complex, but sometimes it's not. There are parties to do it, right?
Yeah.
The doctor knows that as a patient, maybe you need to follow this cure. There are parties to make sure that people, follow it, right? And then there are parties doing it, right? So, when I say that SEO is easy, it doesn't mean that actually is the overall thing is easy, but at least, for instance, right, on a website like ours, obviously we target multiple languages, we have hreflang and all these kind of things. hreflang in itself, like textbook, is easy, right? It's not super complicated. There are parties to decide how to apply it, and eventually spend time with the engineers that is going to build maybe an applet that will build hreflang rules for this application, right? I think this is the hard part, and at that point I think that it's not SEO, in the sense that the outcome is to follow SEO best practice and get it right for Google and co. But the actual stuff that you do is a bunch of engineering with one person on a platform that's the hard part, right? And the same thing in creating content. If you, with SEO in mind, if you create the most exhaustive, most insightful and complete article you could possibly think of about a subject, applying a bit of like optimization or having some structured data or like little tricks like bullet points or tables to have feature snippets and things like that. That isn't so hard, right? Like in comparison to come up with the most knowledgeable article about a given topic, right? Obviously, if the article is the 5 best bar in Paris, that's not super complicated. If we're talking about tax, if we're talking about medical stuff, then it's probably more complicated, without taking away anything for the people who write in some of these other industry. But that's the hard part, right? But even in the scenario of the best bar in Paris, implementing having the right keyword targeting the article, covering the right technical setup of the article, which is an article, right? So a blog, how technically complicated it can be, right? 40% of the web runs on WordPress, which is comes out of the box. So you shouldn't even think about what technicalities you have to work out in a blog. That is not so difficult. The hard part is, you want to write the best article on the 5 best bar in Paris. You have to go to this bar, right? Which takes time. You have to know why they are the best bar in Paris. You have to sense check that this is actually true based on what people, intents and search is about. There are many things that they're related to SEO probably, but then they're not really SEO. And that's why we sometimes what we struggle with when we still hiring, by the way, if you want to join. We always hire in SEO. There's no day of the year that we don't have jobs open. The difficult part when we hire SEOs is to eventually find people that are in this mindset that, if you're doing SEO advice, your job is not only to give a recommendation, but it's to do it, right?
Right.
If you're working in the editorial team, you have to produce the article. We don't expect you to write it completely, but you have to at least produce the article end to end. If you work in the technical team, you have to build the page, right? Like with engineers who build the page. That kind of is significantly harder. And often people fail in the sense of giving us confidence that they can do it because they're so used to stopping at the point where I say, okay, in this page there should be this thing, and this other thing. And okay, cool. How are we going to put it there? Right? Let me give you a bit of context. This page is built on a template that scales across, 17 languages and 750 variation. How are you going to implement this? Right? How are you going to test it? How are you going to, I think that's the, coming up with the SEO recommendation itself. Obviously, it requires you to know SEO. It requires you to have experience. It's probably the more experience you have, the better you can come up with a recommendation. But the implementation part is the most complicated one by far, right? If SEOs would get better at implementing stuff, which means that they need to know what writing an article mean, building a page with an engineer mean. If they would get better at that, even though they're not the strongest SEO in terms of knowing the latest trick of the game and following the latest, oh, Google likes this and not that, they can probably have very good success, right? Then obviously being on top of the game helps, right? In the sense that, you have to take decisions or where you want to go. In terms of the technology that you build, right? So when there was AMP, we decided to not go with AMP, right? And at the time it was a bit controversial because everyone was rolling out AMP, and or otherwise when there are certain feature snippets, we have to make a call whether we want to change a certain layout to try to eat them better, and that obviously drives the numbers quite a lot. So in some cases, isn't just a little bit of SEO tip, but it's actually meaningful in terms of the overall growth and performance. So some stuff is important, but then the core of it, which is eventually building that page, that kind of stuff hasn't changed a lot. Probably
fundamentals, in the last, man. Fundamentals don't change. It remains the same.
Yeah. These days I do SEO by myself on my weekend websites at home, because on the day-to-day I'm kind of not allowed to touch some stuff because people in the team do it. So I do SEO myself on some of my websites, and that's where I like to keep up to date and testing things. But then what I realized is that at least I have this project where I'm building some kind of aggregator, and I've been working on this thing for a year now. I don't have time, so it's terrible. Forget about me being serious on any project, but it's just like a couple of hours every weekend. And so super slow. I've been working on this for a year, and I still haven't done any SEO, right? So we put together some templates, we put together the architecture of the website, maybe call it SEO. I've done some very top-line keyword research to inform a bit how the site is built. But I haven't done anything in the like of working on any titles, working on any structured data, working on we're making sure that this thing is fast. But yeah, like the many things that other people would be, oh my God, terrible, that to date is still not a problem because the website does not exist. The day that they have done anything and the website exists and the content is all there, and there's nothing else I could touch, I will probably think about those things. But in between, I'd rather have but obviously this coming with the principle that I know SEO, and I haven't committed any murder level mistakes.
Right.
I didn't launch things on subdomains. I didn't. The thing is scrollable to begin with, right? So there's some basics that is right that I do, but then there's a lot of other stuff that probably people spend a huge amount of time on that I haven't thought of, or like I don't have the luxury of doing it. And the same thing was happening at Wise, right? Early days we did not have the luxury of look at one by one page ranking and meta title, right? We built a template that was generating some of this meta title, and we are optimizing sometimes this template for some certain type of pages, but that's about it, right? Like, I mean, sometimes being in an environment where you are constrained on time and you have many things that you can do, helps you a little bit on prioritizing the most important one. I think sometimes the people that consult in agency, they have a lot of time to some extent, and they are allowed to touch only few things. That's why they over-engineer some stuff. Because one thing they cannot touch it, the other thing they cannot touch it, the other thing is, is out of their comfort zone. So there are many. They end up having a limited set of things that they can do, and then obviously they spend a huge amount of time as opposed to having a lot of things to do and having to really make a hard call on am I going to do it or not, right? Because that's often the trade-off.
It seems as though the SEO that you're carrying out is very much led by the business needs, which in my opinion is the right way of doing SEO, right? Because there is always this case of, okay, we have recommendations, but recommendations is not the end goal of SEO. As you mentioned earlier, is to actually implement it. Do you think, having worked agency side and client side, do you think being client side has shapes the way you think about SEO in this manner, to lead by, or to have your SEO led by the business needs?
Absolutely. That's why I probably would not work in an agency anymore. Very unlikely.
It's very different.
It does not mean that people. But it does not mean, like, so let's be very clear. It doesn't mean that the people in agencies are not smart about it. Yet there are constraints on the fact that the agency. So, for instance, when I was in agency, it's not that we were doing bad choices. If I would have been in-house for the same company, I would have done roughly the same choices. Yet maybe I had to spend 1 day a week trying to pitch with the people in the agency another service to the client. And that's not like when I'm in-house, I don't have to pitch anything to anyone, right? There's just a conversation between me and finance, right?
Yeah.
What SEO is going to do,
Yeah.
how many people I will need, and like what's going on. So equally on the actual deliverables of just SEO stuff or like particular projects, you remove the stuff that is I think sometimes the tricky part, and again, it's not often the fault of the people in the agency, because in some cases they're not so close to the ability to measure impact. So there are some clients that go to the agency and say, oh, by the way, I'm letting you know from the very first day that we will not measure business impact on this thing. Your goal is to have traffic, ranking, whatever the goal might be, right?
Yeah.
If you work in that environment, like it or not, you cannot influence the business, or you don't know whether what you're doing is influencing the business.
Exactly.
And then you basically are probably going to be happy and put on a slide the fact that you have achieved a very sexy feature snippet, but then you don't put in there the fact whether you've driven more or less business to this given company, and that's all the stuff that goes away client side, in the sense that when we have the conversation about our success, it's just why is user growth. The conversation about whether we're going to do more of it or not is between us and finance, talking about investment constraints, yet related to why is business growth. We do not discuss ranking when asking for budget. We do not discuss, we just discuss money, right? And how much money we bring to the business, and how much money we need to in the next 12 months to scale this operation, yes or no. I think that makes it cleaner, and unfortunately, because most of the people are not in that position, then it impacts a little bit the and something that you can notice probably. I'm not a massive fan of like people on Twitter, for instance, that publish all this chart. Oh, with my website I'm making 20k a month, 50k a month, 100k a month, millions, right? Yet within that there's something that is worth taking away. I think sometimes is that if someone is building something with their own money, whether it's they make £100, whether they make 1,000, whether they make 100k a month, they are judging every choice that they make with their own money based on how much money goes in and how much money goes out. If you are the SEO that is playing with someone else's money that doesn't know how much money goes in, how much money goes out, the day that you have to run your own website, I would have a little bit less confidence in you to, if I have to borrow you £1,000, than someone else who probably is bragging about some chart, yet has to manage their money, because if it goes wrong, it's their money, right?
Yep.
Like, I think that's the bit that I think that's why personally I incentive all people to have personal projects, even though some of them are more successful than others, right? Actually, the guy that was working with me when we started Wise SEO now runs the biggest finance YouTube channel in Germany. With a friend, they are writing books. They get invited to all sorts of events, and they've been really successful. And so there are people who, in this type of side gigs, they manage to be very efficient and do it really well.
Yeah.
There are people like me that I have a very busy job, and then and sometimes I like to not do it. That these side gigs are very, in comparison to that, very unsuccessful. Yet just the fact that you do it makes you learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then makes you be a bit sharp on the fact that last year I put £10,000 into this project and I only got 7 back, right? And once you get to that level, then even your conversation as SEO is a bit more meaningful on the business side and on what the business needs than you thinking, that you can just make someone happy with some traffic or with some ranking, with something that like is meaningful to you, is worth discussing at a SEO conference, is worth sharing for the sake of learning with other peers. Yet, like again, it doesn't answer what the business what the business really needs, right? And I think that's important, and that's why we really value, especially people early days into their career. If you have a side project and you're applying to work advice, probably you get a bonus point. Just because at least you can talk about something that you have to pay the server by yourself. You have to, you probably know that stuff costs money, even though it's tiny, but it's in the grand scheme costs money, right? There's no such a thing as a free websites or free, everything costs a little bit, even buy a bunch of useless domain costs money, right? And so I think that kind of stuff is important to be attached to it. And one way that we have to even in the people that work advice, to challenge this is, when someone comes up with a recommendation that it might have impact on business, but you don't know at that point in time, or at least that whatever will happen, the impact will not be huge on business. I think a healthy question to ask, and as a manager to people is, if we have to pay this out of your bank account, would you do it? Right? If this was your company and it would come from your bank account, would you do it? Right? No matter how much this is sexy in the SEO world, would you do it? Right? Because if you're not going to put your money there, not that we ask people to put money, but just as a provoking question, if this would be your business, I'm pretty sure that people would suggest way less things that are glamorous on the surface yet move less. Like what it really does. And unfortunately, again, that's why I think it's not that there are very smart people in agencies, right? But the environment where they are sometimes force them to basically having to sell something that is not necessarily, they wouldn't pay with their money, right? They are happy if the client pays for it, but if it would be their money on their own website, they wouldn't do it, right? Or at least they would think about it, right? Like a little bit, right? And I think this mindset is important in the sense that it gets you really attached to reality of like what is good to have and what is not. There are many things also where I think, just talking about strictly about SEO, that Google is not so stupid, right? Like it's not 200% smart every single time, but they are probably among the most successful company in the world, if not one of the most, because they get many things right. And there are many services and many, stuff, like even advice, right? Like we have very, very complicated long tail products with a lot of near duplicate pages, right? Each page is unique in its intent, right? Because the pages answer a unique intent, yet the content of the page is very similar to other pages, right? And in that case, we speak to people in interviews, we speak to people even in the team sometimes, and they talk about things like, we might get a penalty for duplicate content. We might, we have a duplication issue or things like that. And then, all of these things are fine if you want to sell me a service as an agency.
Exactly.
But if it's your money, again, let's go back to your money. If it's your money, and the Google job is to sort out documents on the web, and probably before serving those 10 blue links, they go through million and million of pages that look the same. Don't you think that sometimes Google knows enough? Well, I'm not saying that they always get it right, but there's a good chance that sometimes they do, right? So again, like there is stuff that the same thing on all the. I'm pretty sure there are some situations where something like disavowing link have made some impact, but equally over time it feels like Google is even discontinuing maybe the tool. I don't know, and over time it feels like that they don't want people to do this, right? Like, or at least the propaganda in that sense is over, and they are happy with what it is. That's why they're not making too much noise on this subject. So maybe that's fine. And again, like selling services or doing activities for peace of mind is only okay when someone has money, right? Like if it's your website, like I'm pretty sure that on your personal website you might have some spammy looking link, but still you're not going to spend 3 weeks trying to remove them. you're probably going to live with it, right? Like
exactly.
Or maybe Yeah, or maybe the WordPress that you have got some, you find out that some WordPress template, they generate a lot of, like parameter, category pages, all these kind of things. 40% of the web is on WordPress. Do you think that Google has not got that problem before, right? Like when they try to crawl WordPress website. And again, why would I spend, like, that's why even on some WordPress that I have, if I see this problem, I'm like, oh, fuck it, I'll just leave it. Right, like it's not worth me 1 week, or maybe even like getting some extra help from a developer in case my coding is limited to fix this. That again, like it feels like a nice to have, right? Like there are many things that
go ahead.
No, there are just many things that they are nice on the surface, but they are not, or otherwise it's difficult to build an experiment that proves that they're a good idea. If it's something you cannot validate it with a sane experiment, don't do it.
Yeah.
Then after you have done it once, you cannot do it again. Right? You cannot come back to me and tell me that I did it was a good idea. Right? That's another thing that I would suggest people.
Exactly. It's almost as though a lot of SEOs do SEO for the sake of SEO. It's almost like best practices stuff are carried out just to appease the SEO of a site rather than the business of a site, which brings me up to this question I had as you were speaking. With SEO, there's almost like 3 areas of it, right? So you can do SEO for let's say industry best practices SEO. You can be led by your business needs. And you can also be led by the vertical you're in, the industry vertical. So finance, money transfer, or I don't know, let's say retail, for example. Out of business, industry, and vertical, which area of SEO, or let me rephrase this, what should SEOs be led with more? Is it the industry best practices, the business needs, or the industry vertical needs?
Yeah. I think that I would only put 2 questions, in the sense that the third one is almost a necessity of the environment that you're in. So between SEO best practice and what the business need, if you eventually want to grow your team, and if I would have just applied best practices when I joined, and this team would have not done anything to the business, by now there wouldn't be 50, 60 people in the SEO team. So that's necessary. I think there's no in between. On the following what's going on in your vertical, I think it's almost a necessity of the environment that you're in to adapt to that. An example being, there are some verticals, obviously, where the tactics and the appreciation of certain activities is different, because obviously some of them, there's some industry where there's a bit more spam. There are some industries where the quality of the content is less good on average. So you have different bars to set. Also, there are some countries. I would also add markets, because the likeliness of Google getting it right in countries where English is not the first language is, at least from our experience, is significantly lower. Like Google served 2 different search results for the same query, just spelled in a different way in Italian. And these kind of things that in English don't happen, they happen in different. So the environment where you're in, being a market or being the vertical, is kind of a constraints that you have to play with. But then keeping that in mind, then you have to choose between, okay, I do best practice or I do what matter for the business. I would go for the latter. And I think like even outside the in-house people, even people working in agency, the most successful relationship between agency and clients are probably in the situation where the 2 things are aligned to the business, not to the best practice of the agency, right? Like, it's unlikely that this can last unless on the other side they buy SEO services, like buying, something like for fun, right? Which can happen, right? Like I've been in a situation before where they've hired an SEO agency just just to tick a box, right? But often if you have a long lasting relationship between people, it's because eventually people see this align with their business goals, and it's unlikely that these are SEO best practices, right? Like it's often what this thing does to the business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's how I would look at it, right? There are some situations where the environment, like the vertical that you're in or the market, some people don't go deep enough on that. They approach this too superficially, and then they end up doing best practice type of approach on that in that environment, which is obviously wrong, right? Like there are clearly places where the both SERP layout and the composition of the web in those type of vertical is so different that it's worth playing it a bit differently. But then I think it's a general approach, right? Like if you are too superficial in what you do, it rarely works, right? Like there's a good chance the better you get, the more you go in depth into doing it. And that's why I think over time also, something that I appreciate, even though on my weekends I try to change topic from money transfer and finance, is that having worked for like 6-7 years on the same, not the same, we keep expanding, we keep growing our business lines, but some of the core keywords have been the same for years. You get a very good vibe on what's changing and what's there. If you are just operating, 1 month per project, and then moving into something else, your depth on the content, your depth on the SERP landscape and how Google treat things in a given vertical is quite thin. And that's why I think there's also some element, of people being valued by companies if they have more experience in e-commerce as opposed to finance, as opposed to something else. I think there is some flavor to that, right? I have not worked on e-commerce now for the last 7 years. I was working with a couple of e-commerce when I was in agency for the entire period that I was in agency. So back then my e-commerce, skills were probably a bit more fresh than what they are now. It doesn't mean that if tomorrow I go to work for an e-commerce, I would be completely not competent, but I'm pretty sure that someone coming from Amazon going to the same business would probably be a bit more on top of the game for that particular vertical, right? And again, the same could happen someone else in finance, right? I'm pretty sure that anyone could catch up with how much time I spent on finance in the last few years. But then at the same time, on day one, I have been, at least for the
you already know.
Which is not, but at least there are many things that people come to the interview and propose something, and then I'm like, sorry, I've been hearing this thing for 8 years, never worked. The next, right? Like, I think there are some advantages, right, of like knowing something really well, right? From a content perspective, from a Google SERP layout perspective, even to be able to judge things like click-through rate, right? It's very easy. The reason why some of these search tools are off, even though like tools like SEMrush and Href are doing an amazing job, is due to the fact that, their ability to understand click-through rate is not as deep as me running 7 years of Search Console data on those very keywords, right? I've been ranking in every single spot of those 10 from the beginning to the end, and I know what the click-through rate has been in those, and I know that when the average click-through rate curve says X, me that I've been ranking there for the last 3 years, I don't get that amount of traffic, or I get way more, right? The other way around. So I think these are the kind of things that, again, would make you have more insights on like what's up there than someone that for the first time would approach that vertical, just with the use of a tool. That, don't get me wrong, these tools are amazing. When we first tackle a new vertical or something new, this is the go-to, but still, then when you're really deep in the game, I don't need you don't really need a tool to tell you what the click-through rate is going to be on this
industry
type of
knowledge
query.
is your own
Yeah,
knowledge.
or otherwise we have data in the company because of it.
Yeah.
But at least, if someone tells you on a given SERP that this is the click-through rate in position 1, I could pretty much off the bat tell them that no, right? That's not is not the case, or at least you could have strong opinion about that.
Yeah.
I'm not a magician. I need to check the data, and all these kind of things. But you can probably be already very opinionated on where to go. And equally, there are challenges that are specific to certain type of query, right? For instance, there's a way that we attack a certain type of long tail query that we could blow the website in billion of pages. We could tackle very few of them. We could do on and off. There are various approaches to that problem to try to cover a certain corpus of long tail query. And then in that case, it requires you thinking a lot through all these various ways to tackle this problem. And equally, there's no right or wrong answer. It's probably you having to try each of these things. But then again, it requires you to have been deep enough on that problem.
Exactly.
To say, okay,
to know it.
There are 3 ways to go about this, right? Half of the website are doing this, the other half of the website are doing this. And that is not about checklist and best practice SEO. It's more about, what type of website I want to be, how I want to tackle crawling and indexing as opposed to these other websites that tackle it differently. So there are ways that you can probably be opinionated without no sanity on the data yet until you actually try it, right? Yet it comes from the fact that you have seen enough of this to know that actually I've seen enough. There are 2 websites that do this and they're really good at it. So this must be a thing. Are we going to do it? I don't know, right? But at least I know that these 2 on this type of long tail query, they're killing it, right? And I think this type of knowledge helps over time, but then that can be acquired. I think the more you spend time on something, you can acquire it. It's not something that you necessarily need to have, right? But then probably the mindset of doing what matters to the business. That's what is more likely that you need to have, or you need to get into the framework that's the probably most sustainable way to keep your job longer, right? and I think that's yeah.
Absolutely. Fab, I can speak with you for hours on end. You have so much wealth of knowledge. I'm sure we can keep going for another hour. I'm just conscious of your time. Where can people find you online? Just
on Twitter. Pretty much that's the only social media that I use for work these days. Even though it's more or less popular, but I stick to it. And on LinkedIn as well. And and then if people want to chat about Wise, we have an amazing career page, Iron Out of SEOs. And that's the best way to chat to us about things. I think sometimes people are a bit shy in applying just to have a chat, but I think why not, right? Like, we are not a scary corporate company. If you just want to have a chat about SEO, you should ideally be interested in the job. Otherwise, I'm not going to tell you way more about what we do. But at least it's a good way to have a chat about things. But I do spend also, through people that sometimes are investors, sometimes other people that we know. I spend a little bit of time consulting, companies. It's something like half an hour a month that I can allocate. I don't have more time than that. It just helps me to go into other topics or refresh certain challenges. But I enjoy it, especially with early stage startup. Things like, how would I go about hiring the first SEO, which is quite critical.
Yeah.
What would I do now? Like, I have a chat in a few days with someone that wants to have some suggestion on whether they should build a custom CMS or have or just use one out of the box. I think that's probably what we're going to chat about. These kind of things I I enjoy them just because again, a little bit I don't do SEO every single day these days, and a little bit after 7 years on the same set of keywords, I do appreciate the
Variety.
vibe of
Yeah.
opening a tool, opening a tool on a new problem, right? On thinking what I would do in that if I was in those businesses. Yeah.
If someone wanted to get in contact with you for that, is Twitter the best place to go to?
Yeah, Twitter or LinkedIn.
Twitter or
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Okay. I'll have those links in the description for you. Fab, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was a good chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a brilliant day, and we'll catch up again soon.
Okay. See you.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye now.